Hi, I'm Ruth Molman with the Farmington Hills Historic District Commission, and I'm here with Nancy Bates, who has been involved in the affairs of the city since almost the time it became a city. And she's going to fill us in on a little bit of the history that evolved here. We stopped being a rural area in 1956 when they stopped picking up the milk from the dairy farms. And after that, we became more suburban as we went along. I'm happy to have you here, Nancy.
Thank you for asking me to come. I enjoy it.
My pleasure. And how is it you picked Farmington Hills to live?
We'd lived in Dearborn, Michigan. My husband and I both are from another state. We lived in Dearborn, Michigan, and he was sent to Chicago, and we went there. And when we came back, we were looking for a more rural atmosphere, a more less suburban than we'd had before. And it was convenient for his work, and we had friends that lived here that loved it. So, and we were very lucky. We found a place in Farmington Hills and Normandy Hills tucked back in the woods. We had a little over an acre, and the kids had treehouse and stream to fish in. It was just fun. And so it certainly has changed a lot since then, but that's really why we came here.
And how did you become involved in the political affairs of the city? Well, it wasn't a city then, it was a township, I guess.
Well, the political affairs of the city, I became involved because I did a lot of public relations, and I was a campaign manager for several campaigns. And then finally they said, why don't you do it? And so I did.
Well, what did you do first?
The first thing I did to be involved in the community when I came was through the church, and I was the outreach chairman for the church, and I started looking around trying to understand what was going on in the city and what maybe some unmet needs were. And I had a conference, a week-long conference. I got a grant from a college and a grant from OCC, and we did a week-long conference on senior citizens' needs. And we had a lot of seniors come, and on Friday, after we'd had this whole week, we had Social Security people, we had everyone in there that could impact a senior's life. We did a survey and said, you know, where are you? What do you need that you don't have? What kind of things would you like in this city that you don't have? And I was surprised. There were a lot of unmet needs, and that's when we went to the cities and asked them to form a commission on aging, and I was the organizing chairperson for that. And from that was my connection into the politics, I guess.
You were an aide in Lansing, I believe, for a while there.
I was. I ran Jan Dolan's campaigns a couple times when she was running for city council, and then later she ran for state rep, and I was campaign manager there, and then I followed her there, and I did legislation. I managed all of her legislation. It was very interesting.
When did you first run for council?
89.
89. And then you became mayor.
Yeah, I was mayor. I was mayor elected by the council back when we did that, which was 12 years ago, I guess. And then I was the first woman directly elected by the people when we changed the charter so that it would, we asked the citizens, you know, do you really want the council to continue to elect your mayor among them, or do you want to directly elect your own mayor? And it was an overwhelming vote that the citizens wanted a directly elected mayor.
Now, what sort of things did you do to create a city like we have now?
Well, we've had wonderful leadership back, Bob McConnell and Earl Offenhauser, Keith Deacon. They really did put a nice foundation here for the community. I had some figures. In 1970, which is about when I showed up here, the SEV, State Equalized Value of Property in the city of Farmington Hills, was $236 million. This year it's worth nearly $5 billion, that's with a B. So we've become quite an affluent community in regard to our tax base. And it didn't just happen. People have carefully planned. We've had wonderful leadership. Bill Kostick was just an outstanding city manager. Steve Brock, I think he's as good as there is in the country anywhere. We're just very fortunate. And I think council's had good people, good dedicated people that have really had the best interest in the community at heart. It's been a fun ride.
Now you've created a lot of recreation that was not here.
That also was a result of surveying the community. The Parks and Rec Commission surveyed the community and said, do you want to tax yourself $500,000 or whatever it was the first time? And if you do, these are the kinds of things we're going to do. We're going to buy some ball fields, and we're going to do other recreational things we've never done. And the citizens said, do it. When we were first started back, it was kind of interesting. The subdivisions were laid out with large recreational areas in them. We thought every subdivision would have its own park. Well, we found out later people really didn't like that they didn't like being backed up. A lot of them didn't like being backed up to a park. Children played in there and they were noisy. They worried about the liability of having someone being hurt on this common ground property. So it was really a concern, and it wasn't available to everyone. So that's when Parks and Rec really started taking off. Jerry Ellis, way back then, was upset because there was no place for the kids to play ball. And he was head of the ball league then. So we really took Parks and Rec, I think, to a new level. And I don't remember if it was 4 or 6 years ago, we decided to fund a cultural affairs director. Farmington Hills has won awards for what goes on here now in the culture. You know, you think sports, but some people aren't into sports, but some people are into the arts. And so we've really tried to make the parks and recreation in the community a general thing, something everyone can find what they like someplace.
I see you taken over Longacre House, which was a
That's
private.
pretty exciting. I don't know if our people have been here yet or not, but that's beautiful. We've fixed it and changed it a lot. And there's just a lot of fun stuff going on over there. And Multicultural has an office there now, and it's a good asset for the community. And it should belong to the people here, and it touches our other beautiful park area, so it's a nice addition. Wonderful cooking shows every Thursday afternoon. There's just so much going on. We just sent a focus out to the people, and it's got a lot of things in there, but you can certainly call City Hall or get the Parks and Rec Department, and they'll send you a flyer telling you all the stuff that's going on. It's great.
It's wonderful. I love what they did with the barn, the
Yes.
historical barn.
It has a lot of use. It's booked almost all the time. And now we have a nature center in there, and there's an arts going on. It's great.
Oh, the nature center is really something. You could sit there and watch the birds all day.
That was a cooperative arrangement with the school district. They put some money in it too, and they have classrooms of kids that come over there and enjoy that. It's a nice asset for the community.
And you have the trails.
Yes, and they're used. And then the sledding hill. It's a nice place. Farmington Hills is just a great place to live. And you know, when I go to national conferences, people know our city. We have a wonderful national reputation.
Do we really?
Oh my, yes. And so many of the things that were started right here in Farmington Hills have become national programs. Our youth program's a national model. Our Emergency Preparedness Committee, national model. I went to Washington and testified for our youth program for trying to get funding for other communities to get it. Mayor's Youth Council, no question, it's absolutely a leadership role. Our senior program, now I think a lot of people have come up to what we were doing, but we started it.
Mm-hmm. And now we have 2 sledding hills. One is Farmington, one is Farmington Hills. Now, how about the cooperation between the 2 cities? How do you feel about that?
Oh, that's our sister city. I love Farmington. And, you know, they just had a harvest dance, and they're doing some more activities downtown, and it's a nice place. I love Farmington, and we have a lot of dear friends there. And Farmington and Farmington Hills have been friends for a long time. We share a lot of commissions and boards. We do a lot of cooperative things together.
How do you feel about combining them?
You know, I don't have a real strong feeling about that. I don't think that's a decision either council's going to make. That's going to go right back to the people. And I think we're getting data, and I think that's important. I think you should have information, but whether we merge or not isn't going to be dollars and cents. It's going to be emotional kind of thing. What's your city going to look like if this happens? What's it going to be like if it doesn't? What are the upsides and the downsides? And the people will vote. They're going to tell us what they want to do. So I'm not going to be out there trying to campaign for either one. I just want the citizens to have the information they need to have before they make a decision, and then look at it and say, you know what, this is what's important to me, and and do that. But it's a long process. This isn't anything you can do quickly to merge two cities. It takes you have to jump a lot of hoops to get there. And in the end, it requires the majority of citizens separately in each city. Farmington Hills couldn't come up with 80% of the vote and be 20% over here and have it happen. It has to be more than 50% in both cities by the citizens. So people say, oh, they're going to gobble them up. There's no gobbling up. It's not even possible. And I don't think anybody wants to do it. I just think it's something that should be considered in these economic times. It needs to be considered. You don't want anybody to have their taxes so high that they can't afford to live where they are. So we'll see what happens.
It's interesting. I guess it goes back to Wendell Brown, who was an attorney at one time. He was the first one to combine the library, and went on from there. That was when it was still a township.
Joint libraries, yeah.
You know, and what is it, 44 that the school system?
I don't know those numbers. That was before me.
Yeah,
that's what I leave to you.
That's the history part of the thing. I love that. Before I'm supposed to know about it, I find out for somebody else.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Now, how do you feel about the commercial and the residential that we have in the city?
We have a good mix. I really think so. Our city fathers a long time ago decided we should have a 35% non-residential, 65% residential. Pretty much kept to that all these years until last year, and the residential taxes went to 66. People got a little stressed about it. Two things are going on there. One thing is the quality of life here is so good. It's just so special that a lot of people are willing to come here and pay $1 million for a house to live here. When you have that price homes, it really skews how much your property taxes are going to be non-residential. The other thing is under Proposal A, if you sell a house, the taxable value and the assessed value is very different now when you look at your rates for a long time because it's been frozen and it could only be raised either 3.5% or 5%. 3.5% of the cost of living or 5% of the value, I think it is, whichever's lower. So you're not going to get hurt that much unless your appraisal goes up. The tax value, I think, changes when you sell your home. We have about 20% of homes that are turned over. And I thought it was interesting the other day. I heard that it was normal for Oakland County to have 2,000 homes on the market at any given time. We have a little better than 20,000 now, so that's scary. It's really. Mm-hmm. But when a person does buy a home, if the taxable value was $200,000, and it goes back up to the real value, so you don't get all the savings from all those years. People call me and they'll say, my house is exactly the floor plan of the one across the street. My taxes are this much, theirs is the other. It's because they bought it later and they didn't get advantage of that frozen tax in there. So it's very complicated and it needs to be fixed. It's broken. Taxes are broken.
Are they going to take it away from the people that were longtime residents, or
take what away from them?
The tax advantage?
I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do in Lansing. It's not anything we can control. I mean, we lobby. We really, Mayor Burnett has really spent a lot of time working on legislation and lobbying for things, but they seem kind of frozen in Lansing right now. They're not getting the job done.
No, they have a mess.
Here we are in Farmington Hills and even the school system trying to arrange a budget on numbers we don't know. We don't know what our money's coming in from. We don't know. Revenue sharing, we have no idea. How do you do a budget when you don't have 17% of the budget in? I don't know. Schools right now, and I don't know their rules, but you have to have so many days notice, and maybe it's 90 or something, before you can lay a teacher off. They don't know how much money they've got. They don't know whether they should be laying a teacher off or not. And it's all because the legislature hasn't done their job in a timely manner. It's not acceptable.
Have you considered going up to Lansing and work on it?
Never. I don't have that kind of pay. I love local government. I think we should have this or this in the community. And you really start talking to the citizens, you work with council, and pretty soon it's here. The Mayor's Youth Council, I love that council. I thought, people said, well, the 18-year-old to 26-year-olds don't vote. They're all disconnected. And I said, we never connected them to start with. So you get kids on a Mayor's Youth Council. I appoint them to boards and commissions, so does Mayor Barnett. When you get kids connected like that, they stay connected. And I really think that's so important. I don't have the patience to go to Lansing and try to get something done. When I was there, we introduced same bills, 1 session, 2 sessions, 3 sessions. You can't get them through. It's ridiculous. We need a part-time legislature, in my perspective. I think they need to remove those term limits. We lost a lot of well-qualified people with that, and I think we need to get the job done. Very few states have full-time legislatures. In Texas, they meet every other year unless the governor calls them back. It's just too much time. It's wrong.
So we have a full-time legislature that they can only stay 2 years. Is it 2 years or 4 years?
The House stays 6, the Senate stays 8. 2 4-year terms for the Senate, 3 2-year terms for the House.
They're not able to get entrenched with each other. And
what I think happens now is, when I was there, we had a Republican senator and a Republican rep, but it doesn't matter if it's a Republican or a Democrat. If you have legislation and you want it passed, you call over there and say, I've got this House bill, this is what it does, and would you help us get it through the Senate? And your counterpart would say, sure, we'll do that. Now, so many times the senators feel these reps are breathing down their necks, getting ready to run for that office because they're term limited, that often you don't have people of the same party cooperating there. I'm telling you, it's broken in Lansing. Somebody needs to fix it. So it's hard to get cooperation. It makes me nervous when people keep saying, I'll go fight for you. The last thing we need is somebody going to Lansing to fight. We need somebody to go to Lansing and fix things because they're broken.
A very different sort of thing. Well, we've been doing so many cooperative things here, they can't catch on to Farmington Hills.
No, but I think that's one reason they'd like that Lansing would love to see us merge, because I think it gets a good message. It's like, look how successful this is. And it's because we are 2 successful cities. These aren't 2 cities that would be merging if that's what the people want, because we're both in trouble. It's 2 cities that are very successful merging because they see advantages to both sides. And that would be a nice model for Lansing to be able to show to other people. Some cities that merge need to, they have to, but we don't have to.
Now, what have you accomplished here that's special in Farmington Hills during the time you were mayor?
Well, you're a member of council, so you don't do anything alone. You have to have the support of the council. I'm really proud of the Mayor's Youth Council. I'm proud of the fact, even before I was on council, that I was the first chair of the Commission on Aging. I was also a charter member of the Arts Commission before I was elected. I'm really proud of this Emergency Preparedness Committee. They've done amazing things. And when I was mayor the first time when I started, I sat on 2 national committees. I began to look around and I understood that the cities that were failing had families that were failing. And I thought, if we want to have a really strong city, we better make sure that we're taking care and supporting the families and the children here. And so I formed a committee, and I said, for 1 year, I want you to study the unmet needs of the children in this community. You have 2 questions. What, if any, are the unmet needs of the children and their families in Farmington Hills? And what, if any, is the responsibility of local government to respond to that? And they met for a year, a lot of cross-section of the community. And they came back and said, we do have unmet needs. We think we should study this and try to do more. And that's when we formed the Commission for Children, Youth, and Families. And right after that started, Chief Dwyer sat on it, and he came in and said, I think you're eligible for a grant from Justice Department. So we went to a workshop in Lansing, and finally someone helped write us. I think we wrote 3 sections. Someone did a rewrite. We submitted the money, and we were called there. Todd Lipp and I went there 2 or 3 times, and they said, well, what are you going to do with it? And we said, Well, we don't exactly know because we're going to ask the kids. All these programs for kids that are failing because some adults sat around in the room and tried to decide what the kids wanted. We're going to ask the kids. Well, they finally said, we're not sure what you're going to do with it, but we're going to give you $387,000, and they did. So that's when our first youth center was launched. Council was a little bit reluctant because they knew that it was a 3-year and then you had to pick it up. So they said, well, you know, how you going to help us after that? And I said, well, we'll have a formal ball every year. We'll have a ball in Farmington Hills to support the youth. And they said, okay. So I started calling people in the community, business people, and said, would you help sponsor this? And they said, sure. What's your 501c3? And I said, well, we don't really have one. I called the city attorney and he said, you not only don't have one, you're not eligible for one. You're part of the government. So that's when I got the idea that we were going to have a foundation, a community foundation that could be a 501c3. And people were wonderful. We got so much support of people coming forward. We formed a community foundation and they've raised several $100,000 for the youth program and for other things in the community. So I'm proud of that too. I've just been very blessed. I've had wonderful people when I was on council to work with, and we just had a lot of common goals. My focus for a lot of it has been the families and the children, and because I think if you don't do that right, it doesn't matter what else you do right.
Well, I think that the youth group that takes care of these children after school has been a wonderful thing.
It's absolutely wonderful. And you know, we've had it long enough now that the chief actually said that he can show statistically that afternoon crimes are down in Farmington Hills, and we've given kids another place to go.
You have an actual, do you bus them there after school or what?
That's another cooperative thing we do with the school system. We have a school bus that goes from the school, takes the kids to the youth center, the closest one to them. And if the kids want to, and we have, I think, 5 open now. If the kids are at the school where they don't have the swimming pool, then we have a van that'll take them over to the school where the swimming pool is. They want to ice skate, they can go over there. There's just so many things for them to do. We have a tutor at one school where they actually tutor the kids, and their grades are up. And we had a mother write, and she said, I'm just so grateful for this. I get my children home at 5:30 in the afternoon. They've got their homework done, they've exercised, and we're ready to have family time together. She said, it's just made a difference in our lives. And I thought, that's probably true a lot of times. Oh,
it's wonderful that you've been able to do these miraculous things in cooperation for this community.
Oh, Todd Lippa is absolutely a saint for the children, I think. He's so wonderful. I've seen Todd hand out his business cards to kids, and he'll say 24/7, and those kids call him too. He's really kind of a dad to a lot of kids. I don't think people know that, but he's just a wonderful, wonderful person, and we're very blessed to have him. The children are very blessed to have him. And he's just been a huge mover and shaker for these kids.
Well, it's wonderful. And I thank you so much for coming to tell us all the things that you've been involved in doing for this community. Thank you so much.
Well, I want to thank you. You know, you don't know where you're going if you can't tell where you've been. And you've given my children and their children, our community's children, a wonderful sense of history so they can always find out what used to be. And I'm really grateful for that. You and your commission do a great job for the city, and I thank you.
Thank you. We've been trying to save those houses and save whatever we can that people can see what it was.
It's a hard job, and I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for coming, and we thank everybody for watching this and hearing a little bit about the history of what has happened recently in our history. We've come a long way from the one-person government and to this complete help for our community that we have, and all the needs that have changed from a farm to a city.